Good day. Welcome to PSY227 Theories of Deception. Study Session 1. Definition of Deception and Interpersonal Theory of Deception. Introduction. This lecture introduces deception and interpersonal theory of deception. The three features of messages that can give clues to deception as well as criticism of interpersonal deception theory will be discussed. Learning outcomes. At the completion of this lecture, students are expected to understand the meaning of deception, understand the interpersonal theory of deception, know and be able to differentiate between the three features of messages that can give clues to deception, and lastly, understand the points of criticism of interpersonal deception theory. What is deception? Deception is a pretense to mislead another person into believing what is not true, which could be whole or a part of the message. If detected, deception causes betrayal sentiments, distrust, and further suspicion of the deceptive individual. Deception cuts across cultures, gender, age, and social status. Interpersonal theory of deception. The interpersonal deception theory, IDT, posits that interpersonal deception is a dynamic interactive process of mutual influence between a sender who manipulates information to depart from the truth and a receiver who attempts to establish the validity of the message. Boomerang, 1964, in Deception, Wikipedia. The theory explains the manner in which people handle actual or perceived deception on the conscious and subconscious levels in face-to-face communication. Communication is influenced by goals for interacting and the significance of the interaction. The sender's messages and comportments are influenced by messages and comportment of the receiver, and vice versa. Purposefully deceptive interaction requires more cognitive resources than honest one, regardless of the deception type, such as falsification, concealment, and equivocation that is involved. When senders manipulate messages, they become anxious over whether their deception will be detected or not. Simultaneously, receivers try to validate the information to detect deception, if there is any. Although people believe they can detect deception, but IDT suggests otherwise, and also that non-verbal cues are not absolute indicators of deception. Three features of messages that can give clues to deception. The central verbal message. This is the focal point of communication. That is the main reason the communication process is initiated. For instance, a communication process between two people can be centered around deciding whether to call off their relationship or not. The discussion on whether to keep the relationship or not is the central verbal message. However, other parts of the communication, such as the ancillary message and inadvertent behaviors, in addition to the central message, can give clue as to whether the relationship should remain or not. The ancillary message. These are subordinate messages and of lesser importance. They can be verbal or non-verbal parts of message. Ancillary or subordinate messages are so called because they are not the main focus of the communication. For instance, someone who is responsible for an amount of money that was stolen during weekend in the office might unconsciously say something or exhibit certain body language. Such unconscious behavior might give a clue that points to the fact that he was at the office during the weekend and perhaps stole the money in question. The inadvertent behaviors. These are unintentional overt behavior exhibited without thinking, resulting from carelessness. These behaviors help in detecting deceit through leakage. For instance, a deceiver who unconsciously smiles while giving an untrue report of how he was robbed is exhibiting an inadvertent behavior. Criticism of interpersonal deception theory. DiPaolo, Ansfield and Bell, 1966, are critiques of IDT. Among other issues, they criticize the theory for not differentiating between interactive communication and interpersonal communication. Interactive communication stresses the situational and contextual aspects of communicative discussion, while interpersonal communication stresses discussion in which the sender and the receiver are influenced to make psychological predictions about one another's behavior based on person-specific prior knowledge. They make a case that such ambiguity in conceptual framework limits the theory's explanatory ability. Study session summary. Deception is a pretense to mislead another person into believing what is not true, which could be whole or a part of the message. Interpersonal deception theory. This posits that interpersonal deception is a dynamic iterative process of mutual influence between a sender who manipulates information to depart from the truth and a receiver who attempts to establish the validity of the message. Bomrind, 1964, in Deception, Wikipedia. The three features of messages that can give clues to deception are the central verbal message, which is the focal point of communication and is the main reason the communication process is initiated. The ancillary message. These are subordinate messages and are of lesser importance than the central verbal message. The inadvertent behaviors are unintentional overt behavior exhibited without thinking, resulting from carelessness. Criticism of interpersonal deception theory. DiPaolo, Ansfield and Bell, 1996, criticize IDT for not differentiating between interactive communication and interpersonal communication. With this, we come to the end of study session 1. Thank you for listening.